Hello there, everybody. Yo soy Alonso y están escuchando el podcast de Salón de Idiomas. Hola, muy buenos días. ¿Qué tal están? Espero teniendo un día maravilloso. Aquí estamos en un nuevo episodio del podcast de Salón de Idiomas y hoy hablaremos de la mediación lingüística para la Escuela Oficial de Idiomas. Para ayudarme un poquito mejor con esto, aquí tengo a Rox de nuevo. Así que, welcome, Rox.
Hey, thank you for having me again.
So, to start off with, what is the Escuela Oficial de Idiomas? Can you explain that a little bit better to me?
So, the Escuelas Oficiales de Idiomas, Official School of Languages, are a nationwide network of publicly funded language schools in Spain that are found in most substantial towns. They are dedicated to the specialized teaching of modern languages, not just Spanish as a second or foreign language, but any modern language for which there is a significant demand, especially English. And we're going to be focusing on the English exams.
Certainly. So this is a test that I have to admit I have never heard of before. So I wanted to know, is this like really recognized abroad or just in Spain?
Okay, so yeah, well, I have to say that if you're Spanish, you might have heard of it. Okay. It has its pros and cons. On the one hand, nationally wide, it has a pretty nice reputed recognition, okay? For instance, if you're a teacher and you're pursuing points for your civil service exam, for the Habilitación Lingüística or the bilingual endorsement, this might be the perfect certificate for you because it has recognition in all the comunidades autónomas, no matter whether their Boletín Oficial is up to date or not. What I say with this is that, for instance, if you're looking to get a certificate with other exam, which might not be one issued by EOI or Escuela Oficial de Idiomas, you might find it difficult depending on where you live. Okay, for instance, in Valencia, so far up to date, their Boletín Oficial hasn't been updated. So therefore, the range of exams and certificates, which might be helpful for you in this case I've just mentioned, it's not a wide range of exams, right? However, any certificate issued by Escuela Oficial de Idiomas is going to be most likely is going to help you achieve all these I have just said, the points in the civil service exam, or even the recognition for the bilingual endorsement, Habilitación Lingüística. So that's a good thing. Now, if you take a look at the drawbacks, is basically what you have just mentioned. At international scale, these exams are not recognized. In the end, they are just within the Spanish territory.
Okay. So, if you just want to settle down in Spain, then there's no problem with this. Actually, it is widely known. So everybody's going to be like, oh, you have a EOI certificate. and that's like amazing, fantastic, great. So the fact that you're telling me that this is still quite well known here is still telling me that this not necessarily is a piece of cake test. Am I correct?
You are indeed correct. You're in the right. It's not. Okay, I'm gonna go with with food idioms. It's not a piece of cake. It's not easy peasy. However, of course, practice makes perfect, and the more you train, the better. If we were to compare this exam to other official exams you might be acquainted to, I guess that Cambridge exams resemble quite a bit this other certificate.
So definitely a rough cookie. Wow.
That's a good idiom.
Okay, so let's focus a little bit just on the Mediación Lingüística exercise. What is it about?
Okay, so this is an interesting new skill which is being pursued and it is being assessed in this exam. Now, I just want to make clear here that it actually depends on the county you live in, right? In the comunidad autónoma you're from, because depending on your comunidad autónoma, this exercise may vary or not. Okay, so that's on the one hand. And on the other hand, it's a pretty interesting skill which has been faced in the official exam for the past, I will say 3-4 years, perhaps. I don't believe it's longer than 5 years now. And what I say by interesting is, what I believe it's interesting is because, the way we have been teaching languages, or a second, like in this case, a second language, right, has been varying throughout the years. So showing you as a candidate, showing that you are perfectly able of delivering a message, but not translating it in a different language, is actually a proof of mastering English. And I believe this is why Escuela Oficial de Idiomas has included this exam, because it's a different way of showing the way you handle this language, and of making sure that we don't just follow the typical old-fashioned exercises that we unfortunately may still encounter in exams like Cambridge, for instance, right? Like use of English, grammar, vocabulary. Now, these EOI exams are straying a bit away from these traditional over-the-hill exams, and they are moving towards more modern ways of showing, improving your mastery in English. And Mediación Lingüística is one of these exams.
Okay, well, that's actually great in so many ways. Like, I not having to worry of having to follow these traditional old methods that, to be honest, nobody uses like in the regular basis.
Definitely.
So that's one thing. However, I guess that this is not just an informal approach that it has. Would you explain the methodology?
Okay, well, you mean like the characteristics of this?
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do I come from and what should I do in order to like achieve this goal? Like, what are they asking for in the Mediación Lingüística?
Right, okay, so basically in Mediación Lingüística, you're required to be able to paraphrase an input, which might be a written input, imagine like a piece of news, or an audio input, or a visual or graphic input. Imagine you have an infograph, you might have a video, for instance. Most likely they are like written inputs. As I told you, piece of news, a part of a contract, or any piece of information which you are going to be required to to convey in English. Okay, and what I mean to convey, because I'm trying to avoid the word translate, because we are not actually translating word by word here. Okay, we have to be able to deliver the message from a text A to a text B, which most of the times is from, in this case, might be from Spanish to English. However, depending on the country, the community, as I've told you previously, it might even be from English to English.
Okay. And what about the other way around? Could I have something in English and then having to convey it in Spanish?
So far, we haven't encountered this in, at least here in Madrid. I'm pretty sure that not, because the difficult part is to do it the other way around, right? So, but you never know. Okay, right? So right now, currently, at least in most of the communities, of the comunidades autónomas, we have 2 ways. So it's a twofold exercise: oral mediación and written mediación.
Okay, so are they really different from each other, or just they part from the same idea? It's just that one is oral and the other is just written.
You've said it. Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like the same thing. One is like conveying your message, you're conveying it in a speech, and the other one written.
Okay. So from your experience, to what extent can we stick to the original test, or to what extent do we have to make the mediation ours?
Okay, this is the tricky part, and actually this is what makes Mediación Lingüística different to a traditional translation, right? And unfortunately, many of us might come across hindrances and difficulties when it comes to figuring out the difference. Now, on the one hand, let's make it clear, a translation is basically kind of a literal translation of what you're actually conveying from a language to another, okay? However, mediation focuses pretty much on the message rather than on conveying everything. So it focuses on paraphrasing. It focuses on reshaping and formulating differently the message from text A to text B. When you reformulate and when you focus on the message, you actually end up omitting certain things which might not be important, at least when it comes to conveying the gist, right? So another aspect of a mediation, besides paraphrasing, is as well summing up. So making a summary. Okay, so in the end, what you're actually conveying and delivering in a different language or in a different format, because imagine it might be from English to English, what it's going to be shorter than the original text you have.
Okay, so well, you had something that I believe is extremely necessary to point out. You have said that we have something like we have to pay attention to what is actually important. So how do we know that we're not being like subjective? We are actually being objective, like this is definitely what is necessary to convey, rather than, oh, this is what I found that this is like really necessary to talk about. However, it might not be going that way.
I've got it. And that's a really interesting question, a very good question. Well, this is a bit food for thought. If we take it from this philosophical way and metalinguistic thinking, there's always going to be a kind of biased behavior when you are conveying this message. What I mean is that as long as you're the one deciding which is the important part, indeed, you're not creating such a neutral way of delivery, right? However, we encounter this situation really often in our daily life. Okay, in all the social situation we are required to convey the main message. Imagine that, for instance, the typical thing, you go to a different country with your family who might not be speaking English, you do speak English, and you have to convey what the guys at the hotel are telling you about the rooms, right? So you won't be necessarily translating word by word, but you're going to be conveying the main message. It's like, hey, mom, basically, we have to leave the apartment at 12 p.m. the next day, right? Or 12 in the morning, the following day. So in that case, you won't be saying each and every word that the guy at the hotel is actually telling you. So there is a certain degree of bias, indeed. However, I believe that when it comes to assessing this performance of how you do the Mediación Lingüística, they're going to be focusing on your ability to grasping the main message and delivering it effectively. So basically on your skills. They're going to be focusing on your skills.
Got it. Now, from the spoken part of it, I believe, or perhaps that's not what it is, but I believe that it's also like really vital to be able to use the words, not just the words themselves, but also like the tone, or perhaps like some manners, or even if you are in front of an examiner, perhaps some gestures, something along those lines.
how would I put it? In the real life, indeed, your body language is going to be extremely helpful. However, in this exam, I still believe that the center point of your attention is going to be on your skill of synthesizing, summarizing, paraphrasing, and grasping the most important things, sliding in some comments, and actually delivering what you're supposed to deliver. Not that much on your body language. In the end, it's an exam, so they're going to be focusing a lot on your English mastery. But I do have to say that the way you speak, the pace, the intonation you have, that's going to be extremely helpful in the outcome of your results. Because, I mean, if you have this constant pace, boring, in the end, even the examiner might think, okay, so is he done or not? I didn't really get the ending, right?
Yeah.
But if you have this like really nice, a bit more moody ways of speaking, you know, you stress a bit more, you have longer pauses when you should be having longer pauses, you're going to be delivering the message much better. It's going to sound more natural like. So therefore, you're pretty more likely to have better outcomes. Okay, so that's a thing. You should be learning how to convey the message as well, not just what to convey, but how to do it. And that's what we do as well here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, for instance, the stressing of words is so relevant. It's not the same that I tell you something like, did you know that he crashed the car, rather than did you know that he crashed the car?
Indeed, yeah. And I mean, this melody, if you want to call it, actually varies depending on the language. And perhaps we're straying a bit away from the main contention here, which is talking about Habilitación Lingüística, but about Mediación Lingüística. I have the other thing in my mind here. But what I meant is that, for instance, the Spanish language tends to be quite linear, whereas the English has more ups and downs.
Exactly.
You know, for example, to be or not to be. You have to emphasize that and stress it much more. And that's the way native speakers do it. And if you do it like that, you're going to be sounding much more native. So therefore, perhaps when it comes to the oral mediación and the speaking exam, the speaking part, your score is going to be much higher.
Sweet. So it wouldn't be actually a problem if I'm just contracting every single word all the time. Normally speaking, I never use full words. I'm always contracting them.
Not necessarily, because in the end, as I told you, that wouldn't be a problem. This is Mediación Lingüística doesn't, well, of course, you can deliver messages which can refer to some really specific text. I mean, for instance, the text A might be a contract, right? So that makes it formal, because text A is going to be this high level, you may encounter like a different range of vocabulary, right? However, in most of the scenarios, you're gonna be required and asked to deliver the message to a friend, right? So you have to deliver the message from that contract to a friend of yours who just came to Spain. Okay, so you have like different suppositions here. They just came to Spain. They have no idea of English. They want to rent an apartment, and that's the contract. And you have to mediate the text and tell them what that contract is about. Of course, some keywords are really helpful when it comes to delivering such a kind of text. Okay, you should be showing certain high-level vocabulary, but not all of them, not all the vocabulary and all the specific terms from the text. Yeah, it should be known.
So I just wanna go back a little, since you mentioned something like, you gotta do this and making some comments. So you mean with comments like literal comments that are coming from you, kind of like what you think personally about it, and making sure that this is my personal take on this. Is that like accepted?
Well, it's actually, I would say it's half here accepted. What we have realized, at least in the exams, most of our students, the exams they had, okay, they presented you. They were required, and in Spanish, they were asked to say, haz un comentario socio cultural del texto cuando medies este texto. So basically, they are supposed to slide in to add some comments, but social cultural comments. And what do I mean with that? Because many people are a bit, okay, that's weird. I don't understand. What does it mean? Or for example, imagine that you are given an article on a famous writer, a famous Spanish writer. And you have to mediate that article to a friend of yours who is doing the thesis, the university thesis on Spanish writers. And when you convey the message, you can slide in some comments depending on where it's like, by the way, this is one of the most famous writers. Mm-hmm. We even had to read some of his of the books written by him or by her. And so that's a comment you slide in.
Oh, okay.
It's
okay.
It's one of the most famous authors in the Spanish culture, or at least here in Madrid, imagine, right?
So I am going to either be told to do so, or just perhaps I gotta like make sure, depending on the content, whether or not I'm gonna like give some personal takes on it.
Yeah, however, I do recommend that, for instance, if you, and I'm talking to the candidate now, if you're doing the exam and you encounter some things you might believe your foreign friend might not know, or some traditions they might be unused to, okay? For instance, you are translating something regarding weddings because your friend wants to get married in Spain, and you have some specific traditions here, and you can clarify that. It's like it says in the article, I want to make sure that you understand my message, so I want to clarify that this specific tradition mm-hmm. is here, so because that might not be clarified in the text A.
Oh, okay, I got it. Sweet. So talking about the repertoire of what we are going to use, what should we keep in mind?
Okay, so there are several things I urge people to bear in mind when it comes to doing this exam. On the one hand, you should be able to come up with synonyms and antonyms of the keywords. If you're required to talk about a text on food, well, just make sure that you don't just repeat the same words you encounter, like consumption, 3 times or 5 times you use the word consumption. You can say, I don't know, intake of whatever, vitamins or whatever. So the idea is to show a wide variety of words, and you have enough synonyms, because when you have to paraphrase, in the end, when you reshape what you are told in text A, you should be able to paraphrase with your own words, right? Because you paraphrase, you don't use the same words. So basically, have a wide variety of vocabulary. Other skill I believe it's important is working on improvisation and working on synthesizing information. And not many of us are capable of doing that. So the more you do it, the better, the more your cognitive skills are going to improve. Basically, improvising, paraphrasing, summarizing. Those are like the gist of a mediation exercise.
Okay, so another thing...
Keep on, yeah.
Yeah, so another thing that I wanted to ask you is, what are the most commonplace scenarios here? I gotta ask, is food something common in these topics, or are we just hungry?
I guess we're hungry. No, it actually depends. We have encountered, for instance, videos on the importance of like imagine videos of the University of Medicine, and they're like a specific university, and they are giving information on that specific university, and you have to deliver the message to a friend of yours who doesn't know to which university to come here in Spain. We have encountered pieces of information like the information of mortgages nowadays. They might be a bit scary. I know it might be a bit scary when you see those texts at the beginning, but in the end, it's about understanding what's about and conveying the message with your own words. Okay. We have seen contracts, we have seen leaflets, infographics. So even some infographics with data, with figures. So you have to work as well on those skills. How do you grasp the information and how you convey it? It's not that difficult, but as I told you, the gist is that.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later, well, in a second. But I guess that like one of the preparations that we might want to have before this test is kind of like reading different kinds of pieces of writing, not just like, I don't know, articles like or magazines, perhaps other things such as you said, contracts, or even, I don't know, like infographics, as you said. Like this is kind of like the preparation that we want to have beforehand.
Okay, now the more literate you are, therefore, the more acquainted you are with different kinds of text, the more likely you are to understand those texts, right? So if you've never, if you have never read a contract in your life, you might get cold feet in the exam when you're supposed to translate that. Careful to convey that message in English or in a different language, whatever. So, of course, you have to be acquainted, you have to be used to those texts. So, the more you read, the better. However, in the end, it's not just about reading, because that can be applied as well for the reading exercises. It's as well, it's based on identifying, the keywords, on delivering coherent information, and on improvisation. Okay, so how can you train this? There are many ways. For example, any kind of improvisation exercise. That's going to be really helpful because it really enhances your cognitive skills. And here we're not talking about English anymore. We're talking about your own mental skills. The more you improvise, the more you're going to be used to that. So therefore, it's going to be more a piece of cake when you do the exam, right? And this as well leads to more fluent utterances. Like you can utterances. Sorry for the pronunciation. You can be more fluent when you utter the words because you are used to improvising. So any kind of activity which implies improvising, like on the spot, doing things on the spot, that's going to be helpful. And then gradually you move towards much more Mediación Lingüística format, But you can start with that. And then another thing I believe it's going to be useful is sight translation. Like you have a text, you scan it, you skim it, scan it, and you just translate at sight without going word by word. That's going to be helpful as well. And then the funny thing, the third exercise you might do, and all these like prior to a Mediación Lingüística exercise might be undertaking and doing plenty of debates, because these kind of oral exercises, they're going to be helping you with improvisation as well. And whenever you debate with others, you may encounter other standpoints on the spot, and you have to make your way through. And I think it really puts you on the spot, and it really helps you to train those skills which are required, those cognitive skills which are required in this specific exam.
Sweet. So going back to the very beginning of the conversation, all this is actually not difficult to find resources to practice with, since it can be just pretty much something that you have around you. For instance, I don't know, like your contract when you are asking for a new product, or like buying something, or perhaps something like that. Perhaps like even your phone bill, exactly, or something, whatever, something like that. Or even perhaps like a friend, a pen pal that seems like, hey, you know, I'm moving to Spain. I really want to know how it goes when it comes to whichever topic. So that's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, but any kind of format and any kind of text, not necessarily those ones, but imagine you have like a WhatsApp conversation and you have to convey that WhatsApp conversation in English. That's a different thing. That's a different perspective and a different, stand.
Fantastic. So you have already told me a bunch of really useful examples, or however we can practice and prepare for this test. Now, what about during the test? What could we keep in mind in order to have a more fruitful test?
Okay, so I believe that working on your attention skills and your attention span is a must. More often than not, when we find ourselves in stressful situations like the ones you're tired, you have to do this exam, you are with other people, that's gonna be stressful. So if you work on your attention span, you're probably likely to be successful in this part, because if you lose the thread of a conversation, you can always say, I'm sorry, just lost the train of my thoughts, and you go back on track. But as long as you are attentive enough, you can convey things, you can convey the message fluently and coherently. Okay, so what you should do in the exam? Well, make sure that you concentrate, like really concentrate, not try to concentrate, but at the same time you're so scared. You just try to concentrate on the exam. Try to grab the most important pieces of information. Leave behind the information which is not useful, okay? And make sure that you do it naturally. Okay, so by the way, you can slide in some phrasal verbs. I mean, there are like a variety of things you can do in this exam. I mean, Salón de Idiomas, we try to do like really holistic, okay? We have different, we always try to our students to face a different type of text, to be a bit scared, because in the end, if you face that situation, you're going to get used to it, and therefore you can focus on the tension, as I've told you, and focus on the text. And of course, we give them like plenty and a lot of different resources and formulas they can use, and that's a different thing. You can use different formulas from the beginning, so part of the exam is going to be already done from home.
Fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. So one last question is, how often are these tests provided? How often can I take this test if I am considering having it?
Okay, so just remember, the Mediación Lingüística is just the part of the whole exam. The exam is going to be having the typical speaking, writing, listening, and reading. Now, depending on the Comunidad Autónoma, you may be having just the oral or the written, or both. Most likely, you're going to be having both oral and written mediación. And, going back to the main contention, you asked me when. Well, it depends. If you're a student, if you're actually a student of EOI, of one specific Escuela Oficial de Idiomas, you're going to be having the dates they're going to be providing you with. Now, you also have the choice of doing the exam por libre. That's the way he said it. It's said in Spanish, which is basically you are not a student of any of these language schools. You just do it because you want to, and that's where most of our students are. You know, we prepare these guys who are going to candidate por libre, and it depends. Well, actually, it's usually a couple of times a year. Normally, you have dates on February, June, and September. That should be like the normal dates. There are a variety of situations. There were times when they were like once a year, twice a year, even 3 times a year. Okay, so imagine that you have it in February, which is like usually for sure you have it in February, but you might not have the one in June, and you do have it in September. So you should be having like 3 chances a year.
Okay, well, I guess that gives some relief to all those who perhaps feel like, oh, I'm not gonna get it right the first time. I might have to wait like another year now. Well, at least it's not an entire year.
Yeah, it's not an entire year.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, I believe that that's mostly it. This was extremely enlightening.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and it's like it has a lot of things to bear in mind. It's really comprehensive. And unfortunately, not many of us, I mean, being a new skill in the exam, it's still a bit difficult to make up your mind with what you actually have to do in this specific part, but it's not impossible. And I really recommend you guys, if you're listening to us, to go to our YouTube channel, because you already have some tutorials made by us, and where we actually give you like specific situations and specific examples and formulas and what to do and how to do it. And even to go to our blog, you have some nice exercises there, a bit different from what you encounter on YouTube. So yeah, you have like plenty of resources at hand.
Sweet. So definitely, if you want to learn more about this, don't forget to just go to the YouTube channel or perhaps the website and even the Instagram profile, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, this week we're gonna post things on EOI, right?
Fantastic.
Okay. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming again, Rox. So I believe that now we are gonna get a snack before I come back.
Yeah, I'm starving as well. It's crazy. It's crazy. I think, yeah, the top of the icing was definitely Mediación Lingüística, which just should be having something for lunch because it's lunchtime.
Yeah. So I'll be back in a second, right after I grab a snack, and then I'll explain a little bit better this conversation. So bye, Rox.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Y bueno, aquí ya estoy de regreso, ya con el estómago lleno, y vamos a empezar a hablar de la entrevista que tuve con Rox. Bien, en la entrevista, Rox nos comenta que la Escuela Oficial de Idiomas es una vasta red de centros oficiales que pertenecen al Estado y que están enfocados en la enseñanza de idiomas modernos, no solo en español, sino también otros que tengan mucha demanda, como el francés o inglés, que es el caso del que hablamos. El certificado de la Escuela Oficial de Idiomas nos sirve para certificar nuestro nivel en el idioma que nos interesa, pero también, si somos maestros o profes, para conseguir la habilitación lingüística y ganar puntos en los exámenes de oposiciones docentes. Tiene mucho renombre a nivel nacional y de hecho es reconocido en todas las comunidades autónomas. A veces incluso nos encontramos con que el título de inglés que queremos convalidar no aparece en el boletín oficial de la comunidad que nos interesa. Rox nos daba el ejemplo de Valencia, que a la fecha de hoy no tienen el boletín oficial actualizado, donde aparecen la cantidad de certificados aceptados para los docentes en oposiciones o habilitación lingüística. Eso sí, el de la EOI es reconocido, por lo que no nos encontraremos con ninguna traba a la hora de presentarlo. Sin embargo, un drawback o desventaja es que no es reconocido a nivel internacional, por lo que este título es ideal si tu objetivo es trabajar y certificar tu nivel en España. Ahora bien, el hecho de que no sea reconocido a nivel internacional no quiere decir que sea a piece of cake o pan comido. De hecho, podemos compararlo con el examen de Cambridge, por lo que no hace falta decir que hay que trabajar muy duro y recordar que practice makes perfect. Bien, en la entrevista nos enfocamos realmente en la parte de mediación lingüística, la cual es relativamente nueva y cabe destacar que su planteamiento varía según la comunidad autónoma en la que se haga. Esta habilidad ha sido phased-in o gradualmente integrada en los últimos años, según Rox, no más de 5 años. Y bueno, ella considera que esta parte es muy interesante debido a que es bastante innovadora, ya que aunque como siempre el objetivo es demostrar el alto desempeño en otro idioma, la prueba como tal consta de reformular un mensaje que recibimos y poderlo transmitir a otra persona, usualmente un amigo, y esto es algo que hacemos a diario, tanto en nuestra lengua como en otra. Es decir, mediar es parte de nuestro día a día. De allí que esta habilidad en la prueba como la de la EOI sea algo innovador, Rox hace mucho énfasis en que no se trata de una traducción directa, sino una reformulación del texto original. Ahora, un punto que Rox explica y personalmente encuentro fascinante es que la naturaleza de estos mensajes es de carácter cotidiano, ya que el input o material a mediar varía en su formato, es decir, puede ser un texto escrito, una infografía, un video y así. Y puede ser que se tenga que mediar de español en inglés o del inglés en inglés. Es decir, las cosas que uno tiene a la mano puede sernos de ayuda a la hora de practicar esta habilidad. Es necesario aclarar que en la mayoría de las comunidades hay dos tipos de mediación, oral y escrita, pero en otras solamente se toma en cuenta la parte escrita. Continuando con la explicación, como esto es una mediación en una traducción, hay que centrarse en transmitir lo principal, en lo más relevante de todo el texto A, incluso pudiendo obviar algunos detalles más secundarios. Por ello, el ejercicio de mediación tiene varios procesos, siendo los fundamentales la reformulación y un resumen del texto A al B. Esto quiere decir que en la prueba hay cierto toque de parcialidad o bias, al ser nosotros quienes decidimos qué parte del mensaje original va a ser comunicado. Luego, yo le pregunto a Rox si el lenguaje corporal es algo en lo que nos querramos enfocar. Y ella me aclara que aunque si bien es algo vital en la vida cotidiana, realmente los examinadores se enfocan más en la habilidad de transmitir el mensaje. Ahora, sí, hay que tomar en cuenta la entonación y la pronunciación. Hay que también evitar tener un tono monótono, como podría pasar si estamos hablando en español, donde a veces se tiene un tono más lineal. Esto varía en el inglés. Hay que tomar en cuenta, como dice Rox, la melodía con la que se habla. Y a pesar de que parezca que nos estamos straying away from the topic, que nos estamos alejando del tema, es necesario tener esto en cuenta, ya que cuando cuidamos nuestra entonación y enfatizamos en las palabras, podemos sonar más nativos y tener más probabilidades de hacer nuestro examen con éxito. Ahora, volviendo a la explicación, a veces hay que introducir o slide in algún comentario sociocultural para aclarar algún concepto o detalles a tu amigo ficticio al que le estás mediando. Digamos, por ejemplo, que tenemos a un amigo que viene de otro país y hay que explicarle algo de España. Por ejemplo, un libro de Cervantes. En un caso similar, podemos hacer un breve desvío del mensaje a mediar para dilucidar el background o trasfondo de dicho referente sociocultural en pocas palabras. Básicamente, si creemos que podemos añadir un pequeño comentario para aclararle algún aspecto a nuestro amigo, lo podemos hacer. Bien. En cuanto al repertorio de vocabulario, hay que, como siempre, procurar usar muchos sinónimos y demostrar un léxico amplio. Otras habilidades que debemos mantener top-notch o alta calidad es la capacidad de improvisar y sintetizar, ya que no se tiene mucho tiempo para preparar este ejercicio en la prueba real. De nuevo, busquemos tener y acostumbrarse a mediar un extenso abanico de textos variados para que no nos den cold feet en la prueba, ya saben. A nadie se le quieren congelar los pies y querer echarse para atrás en el último momento, ¿cierto? Bueno, es que esta es una expresión idiomática que denota una duda que no nos permite hacer algo que teníamos planificado. Ahora, a la hora de unos tips para practicar la improvisación, Rox nos dice que debemos, por un lado, hacer ejercicios de traducción a la vista, es decir, ver un texto, darle un vistazo y traducir el texto según lo vamos leyendo sin traducir palabra por palabra. Lo sé, suena bastante demanding, pero bueno, recuerden, practice makes perfect. Además, mejorar esta habilidad no solo es bueno para hacer un examen fluido, sino también fomenta el desarrollo de nuestras capacidades cognitivas. Por otro lado, debemos mejorar nuestra improvisación al debatir con compañeros, ya que si se está hablando de un tema y alguien no concuerda con nosotros, habrá que adaptarse y aceptar este nuevo punto de vista para poder formular una respuesta coherente y mantener la fluidez del debate. Todo estando on the spot, es decir, hacerlo al instante, improvisando sin tiempo para pensarlo demasiado. Por último, Rox nos dice que es fundamental no perder el hilo de lo que se dice y reproducir la mediación de forma congruente. Cabe destacar que en el salón de idiomas usamos un holistic approach, un método muy completo, trabajando diferentes planteamientos y viendo distintas fórmulas para trabajar esta parte y todas las demás del examen. Y bueno, ya con eso habríamos terminado de revisar esta entrevista que tuvimos Rox y yo. y espero que les haya gustado mucho. Recuerden que si quieren saber un poco más sobre esta parte del examen o de todo el examen de la EOI o incluso cualquier otro examen, pueden meterse en nuestras redes sociales o pueden entrar al canal de YouTube, donde encontrarán muchísimo material para que sigan practicando. Y bueno, los espero para una próxima vez. And take care. Bye. Esto fue una producción de Salón de Idiomas. Se reservan todos los derechos.